My name is Annabelle Thompson, and I'm 28 years old. 4 weeks ago, my parents sold my grandmother's antique piano, the one she promised would be mine, and used all $95,000 to buy my sister a brand new Mercedes. They thought Grandma was too sick in hospice to ever find out. They thought I was too weak to tell her. They were wrong. When I finally told Grandma what they'd done, she didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply reached for her phone, dialed one number, and said 7 words that would destroy everything my parents thought they owned. Before I tell you what those 7 words were and what happened next at my mother's 60th birthday party, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this story. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, let me take you back to the day it all started. The afternoon my grandmother was admitted to hospice. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon, right after my last piano lesson of the day. "Eleanor's had another heart attack," my father said. No greeting, no warmth. "She's stable, but they're moving her to hospice. Family meeting at the hospital in an hour." I dropped everything. By the time I arrived, my parents and my sister Megan were already huddled in a corner of the waiting room, speaking in low voices. My father, Richard Thompson, stood with his arms crossed. My mother, Diane, clutched her designer purse like a lifeline. And Megan, 4 years younger, always the favorite, was scrolling through her phone, barely looking up. "Good you're here," my father said. "We need to divide responsibilities." Not, "How are you holding up?" Not, "This must be hard for you." Just logistics. "Someone needs to visit Mother daily," he continued. "Diane and I have the business to run. Megan's in a critical phase with Daniel's family." Daniel Harrison, Megan's boyfriend of 8 months, son of my father's, most important business partner. "So, Annabelle," my father looked at me like he was assigning a chore, "you'll handle the visits. Your schedule is flexible. Teachers don't exactly work overtime." I wanted to say that I taught music to 37 children every week, that I ran after-school programs, that my time had value too, but I didn't. "Of course," I said quietly. "I want to be with her anyway." "Perfect." My father was already turning away. "Keep us updated if anything changes." As I walked toward Grandma's room, I heard my mother's voice drift down the hallway, meant for Megan's ears alone. "At least she's useful for something." I kept walking. I didn't turn around. Not because I didn't hear, but because I'd grown so used to this kind of pain that I'd stopped expecting it to be acknowledged. Grandma Eleanor's room smelled like lavender and old books. She insisted on both. "They try to make everything smell like antiseptic," she told me on my first visit. "I refuse. If I'm going to die, I'll die surrounded by things I love." She was 76, sharp as a blade, and dying of congestive heart failure. The doctors gave her weeks, maybe a month or 2 if she was lucky. I visited every day after school. We talked about music, about her years performing across concert halls in the Northeast, about my students who couldn't yet read notes but already felt rhythm in their bones. One evening, she reached for my hand. Her grip was weaker than I remembered, but her eyes were fierce. "Annabelle, I need you to know something." "Anything, Grandma." "The Steinway." She paused, letting the words settle. "My mother's piano, the one from 1892. I knew it well. I'd learned my first scales on those ivory keys when I was 7 years old. That piano had been the soundtrack of my childhood, the only place in the family where I felt truly seen. "It's yours," she said firmly. "I've already told Richard and Diane, told them last month in front of everyone. That piano belongs to you." I remembered that conversation. My father's jaw tightening, my mother exchanging a look with Megan, my sister rolling her eyes and muttering something about sentimental junk. "Grandma, you don't have to." "I want to." She squeezed my hand. "You're the only one who understands what it means. Promise me you'll take care of it." "I promise." She smiled then, a knowing smile that seemed to hold secrets I couldn't yet see. "There are some things more valuable than money, child, and some people who need to learn that lesson the hard way." 2 weeks later, everything changed. Grandma had asked me to bring some old photographs from her house, pictures of her performing days, Images she wanted to see one last time. I still had a key, so I drove over after school on a rainy Thursday afternoon. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I walked through the foyer, past the dining room, and into the living room where the Steinway had stood for 30 years. The space was empty. I stopped breathing. Where the piano should have been, there was nothing but a rectangular indent in the carpet, a ghost of something that had lived there for decades, now violently removed. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone. "Mom," my voice cracked. "Where's Grandma's piano?" A pause, then my mother's voice, casual and dismissive. "Your father handled it. Adult matters, Anna. You don't need to worry about it." Handled it? How? Where is it? I said, "Don't worry about it, Anna." Click. She hung up on me. I stood in that empty living room for what felt like hours, staring at the indent in the carpet. The rain pattered against the windows. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled. I drove to my parents' house that evening. My father answered the door with a glass of scotch in his hand, looking annoyed at the interruption. "The piano," I said. "What did you do?" He didn't even flinch. "Sold it. Got $95,000 for it. Good price." The world tilted. "You sold it? Grandma said it was mine." "Grandma's dying, Anna." He took a sip of his drink. "She doesn't need a piano, and neither do you." Behind him, I heard the jingle of car keys. Megan appeared in the hallway, grinning. "New keys for a new car." "You bought her a car?" My voice was flat. "With Grandma's piano." My father shrugged like I'd asked about the weather. "Mercedes-Benz. Megan needs to make the right impression on the Harrisons. Daniel's family is particular about appearances. That piano was supposed to be mine. And what would you do with it?" My mother appeared behind my father, arms crossed. "You teach children's music classes, Anna. You don't perform. You don't have the space. Megan needed that money for her future." Her future. I repeated the words, tasting their bitterness. Megan sauntered into the foyer, swinging her new keys like a trophy. "Don't be jealous, Anna. It's not a good look." She smiled, all teeth. "Maybe if you'd picked a better career, you could afford nice things too." I looked at my parents, at my sister, at the life they'd built where I was always the afterthought, always the one whose needs came last. "Does Grandma know?" Silence. "Does she know you sold her piano?" My mother's face hardened. "She's in hospice, Annabelle. She's on morphine half the time. She doesn't need to know anything that might upset her." "You mean you don't want her to—" "No. I mean—" My mother stepped closer, her voice dropping to something cold and threatening. "That if you tell her and it causes her stress and something happens, that will be on you. Do you want to be responsible for killing your grandmother?" The accusation hung in the air like poison. I should have backed down. The old Annabelle would have. But something had shifted inside me. Something had finally broken. "Grandma has a right to know what happened to her. Property," I said quietly. "And I won't lie to her." I turned and walked out before they could respond. I didn't sleep that night. My apartment felt smaller than usual, a modest one-bedroom that my parents had always mocked as proof of poor life choices. I sat on my second-hand couch, staring at a framed photograph on the bookshelf. Grandma Eleanor at her final concert 20 years ago. Her fingers poised above the keys, her face luminous with purpose. That same piano, the boys, one they'd sold like it was nothing. My mother's words circled in my head. "If something happens, that will be on you." Was she right? If I told Grandma, would the shock hurt her? Would I be causing more pain in her final days? But then I remembered what Grandma had always taught me. "Truth can wound," she'd said once when I was 12 and didn't want to tell my parents I'd failed a math test. But lies always wound deeper. They just take longer. I pulled my knees to my chest and thought about the last 28 years. Every time I'd stayed quiet to keep the peace. Every time I'd accepted less because fighting felt futile. every time I'd made myself smaller so my family could feel bigger. And where had it gotten me? Here. Alone. Invisible. Watching them erase Grandma's wishes like her words meant nothing. If I stayed silent now, I wasn't keeping peace. I was becoming complicit. By 3 in the morning, I'd made my decision. Grandma deserved the truth. She deserved to know that her son had stolen from her, lied to her, and assumed she was too weak to matter anymore. And maybe, just maybe, I deserved to stop apologizing for existing. I set my alarm for early morning. I would go to hospice before school. I would tell her everything. Grandma was awake when I arrived, propped up against her pillows, watching the sunrise through the window. "You look like you haven't slept," she said softly. "I haven't." I pulled a chair. Close to her bed, took her hand. "Grandma, I have to tell you something, and it's going to hurt." Her eyes, still sharp despite everything, studied my face. "Then tell me." So I did. The empty space in her living room, the $95,000, the Mercedes-Benz gleaming in Megan's name, my father's casual dismissal, my mother's threat. I told her all of it, bracing myself for tears, for shock, for the kind of devastation that might break what was left of her fragile heart. Instead, Grandma Eleanor let out a long, slow breath. Not a gasp of pain, not a cry of betrayal. A sigh, the sigh of someone who had seen this coming. "Grandma," I whispered. She turned to look at me, and her expression wasn't grief-stricken. It was calm, almost resigned. "I knew this might happen, sweetheart." "You knew?" "I know my son." Her voice was steady. "I've watched him become this person for 40 years. I hoped he'd change, but I also prepared for the possibility that he wouldn't." My mind raced. Prepared how? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she reached toward her bedside table. "Hand me my phone, would you?" I passed it to her, confused. She scrolled through her contacts with surprising dexterity, found a name, and pressed call. Then she put it on speaker. 3 rings, then a man's voice, deep and measured. "Eleanor, how are you feeling?" "I'm dying, Harold, but I'm clear-headed, and it's time." A pause. "I understand. When?" "Sunday. Diane's birthday party. At my house. I'll prepare the documents." "Thank you, old friend." She ended the call and looked at me with a small, knowing smile. "Grandma," I stared at her. "Who is Harold?" "Harold Jennings." She set the phone down gently. "He's been my attorney for 30 years. He was your grandfather's closest friend." "You have your own attorney?" "I have many things your father doesn't know about, Annabelle." Her eyes twinkled despite the exhaustion, etched into her face. "Richard assumes he understands everything about my affairs. He's always assumed that. It's his greatest weakness." I felt like I was standing at the edge of something vast, looking down into depths I couldn't see. "What's happening on Sunday at Mom's birthday party?" "Justice." Grandma squeezed my hand. "Delayed, perhaps, but justice nonetheless." "I don't understand." "You don't need to understand everything yet." She leaned back, against her pillows, suddenly looking more tired. "I just need you to do one thing for me. Anything. Come to the party, dress nicely, and bring your patience." A ghost of a smile. "The kind of patience I taught you when you were learning Chopin and wanted to throw the sheet music across the room." I almost laughed despite everything. "That bad?" "Worse." Her expression softened. "But necessary. Your father and mother need to learn that actions have consequences, and I've spent 5 years making sure that when the lesson finally came, it would be unforgettable." 5 years. She'd been planning something for 5 years. "Grandma, what did you do?" She closed her eyes, exhaustion winning out. "I protected you, sweetheart, the way I should have protected you all along. I'm only sorry it took me so long to act." I sat with her until she fell asleep, my mind spinning with questions. Harold Jennings, Sunday, my mother's birthday party in Grandma's house. Something was about to change. I could feel it. I just didn't know what. 2 days later, I found myself sitting in a small law office on the outskirts of Philadelphia. Harold Jennings was nothing like I'd expected. He was in his late 60s, with silver hair and gold-rimmed glasses. His movements were slow but precise. His office smelled of old leather and paper, lined floor to ceiling with legal volumes. "Annabelle Thompson." He extended his hand. "Your grandmother speaks of you constantly. It's a pleasure to finally meet you." "Mr. Jennings, Harold, please." He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Sit. Your grandmother asked me to explain a few things before Sunday." I sat. My hands were trembling slightly. "Your grandmother is a remarkable woman," Harold began. "She's also far more astute than her children give her credit for. She's been observing and planning." "Planning what exactly?" He folded his hands on the desk. "Tell me, Annabelle, do you know who owns the house your parents live in?" "They do. Grandma gave it to them when Grandpa died." Harold's expression didn't change. "Is that what they told you?" "It's what everyone says. Everyone's wrong." He pulled a folder from his desk drawer and slid it across to me. "Your grandmother allowed Richard and Diane to live in that house rent-free, but she never transferred ownership. Not legally. Not ever." I stared at the document in front of me. The property deed. Eleanor Whitmore's name. Clear as day. No transfer, no amendment. "They've been living in her house for 10 years, I said slowly, thinking it was theirs. "Precisely." My head was spinning. "But why would Grandma let them believe—" "Because she was watching, Annabelle." Harold leaned forward. "Watching to see if her son would prove her fears wrong. Unfortunately, he did exactly what she expected.